My marriage was a political sacrifice. It bound my warrior race, the Kahar, to a species of soft-skinned diplomats from a forgotten little planet called Earth. My husband was my shame, a harmless human named Liam who spent his days reading flimsy paper, books and fussing over a small hydroponic garden. I saw him as a pet, really, a symbol of my people's desperation. Then the treaty broke. As the Vorlag marauders tore through our flagship, my honor guard fell, their silver armor breached and broken. I looked for my husband, expecting to find him curled up in a corner or already dead. Instead, I found him on the bridge of the enemy command ship, surrounded by their slaughtered army. He was calmly using his foot to close the eyes of their dead warlord. It was in that moment I realized my father hadn't married me to a lamb. He'd fed a wolf to the wolves. Tob Kahar is to be born into battle. From day one, we're taught that strength is the only virtue that matters. Our skin is a natural chitinous armor, our bones are dense, and our minds are honed for strategy and conflict. My father, the Imperator, rules 1,000 star systems won through conquest. And me, I was his finest creation. Zilia, blade of the Imperium, undefeated in the ritual combat circles. Commander of the 7th Fleet, my life had one purpose: defend the Kahar Imperium. Then came the treaty with Terra. A decade-long war against the Vorlag Syndicate had bled our resources, cracking the very foundations of our empire. The Vorlag are locust pirates and slavers who fight with no honor, only a hunger for destruction. We were winning, sure, but the cost was becoming too high. That's when the humans, masters of trade and talking, offered a solution. They'd give us the resources and supply lines we needed to finally crush the Vorlag. In return, a binding alliance, a marriage. Between me, the Imperator's daughter, and one of them, I was expecting a diplomat, maybe a corporate prince or some political heir. I was ready to tolerate a soft-handed but clever partner. Instead, they gave me Lion. He was underwhelming. Kahara tall and broad. He was average and slender. His skin was pale and unarmored, so soft it looked like it would bruise if you poked him. No visible weapons, no tactical gear, not a single scar from a glorious battle, just placid, unassuming blue eyes. He spoke in quiet, measured tones, and had this habit of smiling gently when he was confused, which was often. He was the exact opposite of everything my culture respected. Marrying him felt like the greatest insult. My father could have delivered a public announcement that his greatest warrior was being traded like livestock for fuel, our life together on the Imperator's fury. My flagship was cold and distant. He was given nice quarters, which he quickly filled with his strange hobbies. He grew a small garden of earth plants under a lamp, murmuring to them like they could hear him. He'd lose himself for hours in ancient paper books with brittle pages. Sometimes he'd try to share parts with me, his face lit up with some passion I couldn't begin to understand. I'd just listen with cold disinterest, my mind on fleet movements and battle plans. He was my husband in name only. In reality, he was a ghost haunting my ship, a quiet, constant reminder of the sacrifice I'd made. My honor guard, my most trusted warriors, looked at him with a mix of pity and contempt. They saw what I saw, a fragile creature, a pet. He seemed totally oblivious to it, always offering them a polite nod or a quiet good morning. I asked him once what he did before he became my political prisoner. He was staring at some little plant with yellowing leaves. I was a gardener of a sort, he said, his voice far away. I helped solve pest problems. The answer was so absurd, so perfectly, harmlessly, Liam, that I just turned and walked away. A gardener. They had bound the blade of the Imperium to a gardener. My shame was a physical thing, a shroud I wore every single day. The peace brokered by the humans was a fragile thing. For 3 cycles, the Vorlag stayed quiet, licking their wounds. We used the time to rebuild, to strengthen our borders, all thanks to the endless flow of Terran supplies. I almost let myself believe it would last. A fool's hope. The first sign was a series of comms blackouts near the Viridian Nebula, a known Vorlag hideout. Then, one of our patrol squadrons vanished. I knew it in my bones. The locusts were coming back. I put the fleet on high alert. My gut screamed the first strike would be personal. The Vorlag warlord, Krell, was a creature of pure ego. He'd want to cut the head off the snake by hitting my flagship. The attack wasn't a declaration of war. It was brutal and instant. The ship screamed as Vorlag cruisers dropped out of hyperspace right on top of us. Their plasma cannons tore through our forward shields before our gunners could even get a lock. Alarms blared, bathing the corridors in a blood-red emergency glow. My warrior instincts took over. All the shame, the politics, it all fell away, replaced by the cold, pure focus of combat. I strode to my personal armory, the plates of my combat armor clicking into place. The weight was a comfort, a second skin. My honor guard, 7 of the finest Kaha warriors alive, formed up around me, hands already on their plasma GLRIVES.as we were about to head to the bridge. I saw Liam. He'd just stepped out of his quarters, drawn by the chaos. He was wearing his soft civilian clothes, a pathetic contrast to the armored giants around him. He looked at me, his blue eyes wide, but not with the terror I expected. It was an unnerving stillness. I felt a flash of pity mixed with annoyance. He was a liability. Husband, I said, the word tasting like ash. Go to the aft escape pods. Launch immediately. My guards will give you a code that marks you as a non-combatant. I was protecting the Alliance, not him. He looked at me, then at my guard, then back at me. He gave a small, calm nod. Be careful, Zilia, he said. His voice was perfectly even, not a tremor of fear. Then he turned and walked, not towards the escape pods, but deeper into the ship, toward the main hangar, where the boarding parties would be swarming. I figured he was just confused by the violence. I had no time to correct him. My duty was to the ship. I turned my back on my harmless human husband and marched toward the fight. The fight for the Imperator's fury was a storm of fury and chaos. The Vorlag were just as I remembered, savage, strong, and with zero discipline. They swarmed our corridors, their crude axes cleaving through bulkheads and crew alike. But we were Kaha. We met their rage with centuries of martial tradition. My honor guard and I were a wall of silver armor and humming plasma. For every one of us that fell, we took 10 of them down, but they just kept coming. An endless tide of bodies. We fought our way to the secondary bridge, but the main command center was already gone. Krell, the Vorlag warlord, was broadcasting his victory speech over the comms, his grating voice polluting my ship. My honor guard, my sworn brothers and sisters, fell one by one. Thrashon, shield shattered, was overrun. Lyra, her glaive broken, was cut down from behind. I fought with the fire of a dying star, but I was being pushed back. Searing pain erupted in my side as a plasma bolt found a weak point in my armor. I stumbled, my vision blurring. I was cornered, the bodies of my guards at my feet. A dozen hulking Vorlags stood before me, their insectoid faces clicking with predatory glee. This was it, the end. I raised my glaive for one last stand, and then he appeared, Liam. He walked into the corridor from a side tunnel, moving with a calm purpose that was totally alien to the chaos. He wasn't cowering. He wasn't afraid. He looked at the bodies of my honor guard, and his placid face hardened into something I'd never seen before. A look of cold, absolute finality. One of the Vorlag laughed, a gurgling, ugly sound, and charged him, axe raised high. What happened next wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. Lime didn't meet the charge. He sidestepped a fluid, simple movement that was too fast for my trained eyes to fully track. As the Vorlag stumbled past, Lime's hand shot out, fingers stiffened like a blade. He struck the Vorlag where its neck met its shoulder. There was no blood, just a quiet, sickening snap. The hulking creature dropped like a stone. The others froze confused. Lime didn't give them time to think. He bent down in one smooth motion and picked up the dead Vorlag's axe. He didn't hold it like a Kaha or a Vorlag, with big, powerful swings. He held it like it was a part of him. He moved forward, a ghost of grey and blue. A second Vorlag swung. Lime deflected the blow with the flat of his stolen axe, then used the hooked end to catch the Vorlag's knee, pulling it off balance. As it fell, he brought the sharpened pummel down on its temple. Precise, lethal, 2 down. He became a blur. This wasn't the honorable combat of my people. It was a terrifyingly efficient process of elimination. He used the environment, bouncing off a bulkhead to dodge a plasma shot, then kicking off the wall to drive his elbow into the shooter's throat. He disarmed another, breaking its wrist with a horrifying twist, and used its own blade against its neighbor. His movements were small, direct, and utterly devastating. No wasted energy, no war cries, just the quiet, methodical work of an exterminator. In less than 30 seconds, the other 10 Vorlag lay dead or dying around him, their bodies broken in ways that shouldn't be possible. He stood for a moment, breathing evenly. He wasn't even winded. He looked at me, my glaive still raised, my body frozen in shock. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a deep, chilling sadness. He dropped the bloody axe. It clattered on the deck, the sound echoing in the sudden, profound silence. That silence was heavier than any sound. It was filled with the hum of failing life support and the coppery tang of blood. I stood there among the bodies of my friends and the savages who killed them, and I could only stare at the unassuming human at the center of it all. The gardener, the book reader. He walked over to me and gently took my arm, inspecting the burn in my side. His touch was so soft, it didn't make sense with the violence I'd just seen. It's a clean burn. It'll heal, he said, his voice as calm as if he were discussing his plants. He ripped a strip from his own shirt and began expertly dressing the wound, his hands moving with a practiced efficiency that spoke of long, dark experience. I finally found my voice, but it was choked and broken. What are you? He finished the bandage and finally met my eyes. The placid blue was gone, replaced by a depth that seemed to hold 1,000 grim lifetimes. He looked tired, so much older than he had just moments before. I told you, he said softly. I was a gardener. He let out a heavy, weary sigh. That wasn't the whole truth. On my world, gardener was a code word. It's what they called the people sent in to weed the garden when talking failed. The kind of weeding you can't ever talk about. He leaned against the wall, his gaze distant. Humanity looks peaceful to the rest of the galaxy, Zilia. We project this image of harmless diplomats and traders because we learned, the hard way, that projecting strength just invites challenges. It's better to be underestimated. But that piece is a luxury, and it's paid for by a very small, very specific group of people. My mind reeled. You were a soldier? The word felt tiny, useless. He gave a short, bitter laugh. No, soldiers fight on battlefields. They wear uniforms and follow rules. I wasn't a soldier. I was a weapon. I was part of a defunct Black OPS program from one of Earth's old, forgotten nations. The official term was asymmetrical asset. Our job wasn't to fight armies. It was to make them disappear. We dismantled command structures, sowed chaos, and broke an enemy's will to fight so completely they'd never rise again. It's not honorable. It's not glorious. It's just effective. He looked at me, his face full of regret. I left that life. I wanted it gone. When the Alliance offered this marriage, I volunteered. I thought it was the perfect escape. Who would look for a ghost on the flagship of the Kahar Imperium, married to their greatest warrior? I thought I could finally just tend my plants, read my books. I wanted peace, Zilia. I am so tired of war. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to subscribe. It's the best way to make sure you never miss a new chapter. I looked at him, this man I had dismissed, and I saw him for the first time. The quiet wasn't weakness. It was control. The gentle hands that tended flowers were the same hands that could snap an armored neck. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was the stillness of a predator at rest. He hadn't chosen peace because he was incapable of war. He chose it because he knew it so terrifyingly well. He pushed himself off the wall. Krell is on the main bridge. I have to finish this. He started to walk away. Without thinking, I called out, Liam, you can't face a warlord and his entire retinue alone. He paused and looked back at me. For the first time since I'd known him, he gave me a small, cold smile. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. That's the point, he said. They won't be expecting me to be alone. He was talking about something else, something I didn't understand. And then he was gone. Leaving me in that hall of the dead, my entire view of the universe shattered. I didn't follow. I couldn't. My wound and the shock held me in place. Instead, I dragged myself to a working comms panel and pulled up the ship-wide security pics. I had to see. I had to understand. The main bridge was a nightmare. Krell, the hulking warlord, stood surrounded by his 20 most elite warriors. The picked feed showed Liam just walking in. They laughed. And then the slaughter started all over again. It was what I had seen before, but on a grander, more horrifying scale. He moved through them like a wraith, a whisper of death. He wasn't fighting an army. He was solving a problem. The problem, 21 hostiles on the bridge. The solution, make them zero. The last to fall was Krell. The warlord, a giant who had personally killed hundreds of Kaha warriors, was denied a glorious final battle. Liam didn't grant him a duel. He threw a plasma pistol to disable Krell's weapon arm, and as the warlord roared in frustration, Liam closed the distance. The picked feed cut out. A few moments later, the sheep's comms crackled. It was Liam's voice, calm and clear. "Bridge is secure. Hostile command structure has been dismantled." When I finally saw him again, he was standing on the now silent bridge, just looking out at the stars. The bodies of Krell and his elites were arranged almost ceremonially. He had closed their eyes. It was a gesture of respect so completely at odds with the brutal efficiency of their deaths that my mind could barely hold the two ideas at once. My marriage was a political sacrifice. That part was true, but I had been dead wrong about what kind of sacrifice it was. I thought I was being shackled to a weakling to appease a trading partner. The truth was far more terrifying and far more comforting. My father, in his infinite cunning, hadn't insulted me at all. He had given me the single greatest weapon in the known galaxy. He hadn't married his daughter to a lamb. He had bound our house to a sleeping dragon and then gave it a reason to wake up. I looked at Liam, my husband, the quiet, gentle man who liked to read old books and worry about his plants. And I finally understood humanity. They weren't a species of soft-skinned diplomats. They were a species that had perfected violence to such a degree that they could afford to long for peace. My husband wasn't my shame. He was my shield. And woe betide anyone in this galaxy who ever made him lift it again. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and leave a comment with your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next journey into the worlds of science fiction. Until next time.